Alright guys, so things just keep getting weird, but exactly the right type of weird for this show. Hey guys, Cameron for Preachers, Season 1, Episode 4, Monster Swarm, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. Not that last week's episode was bad, it's just last week's episode was not as good as the first two, but I think I realized that Preacher needs to be weird, and the weirder that it is, the better off. And this episode was very weird. Last week's episode wasn't nearly as weird, but this was a really great episode. I think it was right up there with episodes 1 and 2. I really enjoyed overall. There were some really great scenes in this episode, and just some really great small moments from all the characters here. I really did enjoy it. But let's just get into this episode, because overall I thought it was very well done, and unlike last week, it wasn't really as choppy. Last week, had scenes that were kind of choppy, but this week really didn't, and I definitely do want to talk about it. We start off with the first scene. We're starting at the Anvil Hotel with the school bus driving by in the night. Someone in a mascot costume walks by, a streetlight flares and blows out. A woman then runs away in her underwear, clearly scared. The bus circles the block. The woman runs down a side street, then comes to a chain-link fence and goes through the opening. I gotta say, very well done scene. It's scary, but it's also kind of quirky, just the way it's done. A truck chases her down. The guy gets out, grabs his rifle as she trips and falls down an incline. She staggers down, and some homeless runs her off, and another woman is running and hiding, and she's shot. More men give chase with guns. They're all wearing headlamps, and literally, they're all wearing headlamps. It's really weird. She runs in the tree line, then stops to catch her breath. A light shines her. The men take aim, and she looks at him and says, "You got me, Clive." He says, "Always do, Lacey," then shoots. It's a paintball, but then she screams, disappears. She's fallen down some sort of sinkhole. Clive curses, "Oh shit," and we flash, and basically he curses, "Oh shit." We don't know who this is. We don't know why we're seeing this, but I thought it was a good opening overall. But then we flash back to Jesse as a kid, and he set the church up for service, and he opens the communion wine, sets out crackers, puts the Bible out, hands out programs, and walks down the aisle with his father, the preacher. There's a packed house at the service. Jesse sits up near his dad at the pulpit, and it's kind of a nice scene because you get to see of once how things were. This church at some point was full. People just don't take it as seriously now, but there was a point when this church was very popular, and there were a lot of people that were there, but now just a lot of people aren't showing up, and it's kind of, upsetting, definitely. I thought they did a good job with that. Jesse then sits in a pew now, looking very disturbed. Cassidy sits behind him, asks for a word. He tells Cassidy to summarize. He asks if he remembers when they got drunk, and says, "Two guys came by, and things got rough and testy," and I'm guessing Cassidy decided not to turn against him, but we don't know. We don't have a scene with him and, DeBlanc and Fior, so we don't know if he did, but Cassidy says he thought that they were there for him and had a chainsaw. He says they came back and they're not vampire hunters, they're government clones or androids or something, and he literally tells them all about them. He's not just gonna turn against him, which I like seeing. I like they decide actually to not turn against Jesse. Cassidy lunges back as Jesse opens the door to avoid the sun, and I like the bond these two are having. I think it's really well done. Cassidy runs in a protective hat, says he has to get out of town. Jesse asks about the van, says he killed the clone people. Jesse tells him to fix the damn air conditioning, then gets into his truck. Jesse says the thing inside him is wanted by them, and that's really what they want. As we know, they want his power, and he needs to be careful about that. And Jesse says they'll give it to them and then drives away, and it's not going to be that easy. I think Jesse thinks it's going to be easy, but you definitely get the sense it's not going to be that easy. Even though I think he wants to be that easy, it's definitely not going to be that easy. So then we get to why we saw the whole opening sequence in the first place, because Root has a wrench to recover Lacey's body. Owen is there too, steps off onto a little box, takes a microphone to address the crowd. Odin thanks them for coming, and we get introduced to this new character, Odin here, who is played by Jackie Earle Haley, who, yes, he did play Freddy Krueger in that terrible Nightmare on Elm Street remake that I don't think is awful, but yeah, it definitely is, it definitely is not that great. And Odin says the boys need to watch the rough housing, and says to the ladies, watch where you're walking. And Tulip is there, rolls her eyes. Root says show's over. Exactly something Tulip would do. She's not into this at all. Root says show's over, tells everyone to leave. Tulip hands back, asks the town madam what's up with this, and she says, "What do you expect? It's Chinatown," quoting the movie. Tulip is angry at some of the men walking away smirking, while the poor girl's dead body gets hosed down because they don't seem to care that this girl's body was killed. And honestly, I like seeing Tulip actually care. I like seeing her have genuine concern for this girl, because no one seems to care that this girl was killed, and she actually does. She does actually care this girl was killed. She was in fact killed, and it really upsets her that she was. She doesn't know why anyone would kill this girl, and you totally understand that. You understand why someone would kill her. You understand why she's so upset about it, and basically Jesse comes to see Emily, and her kid says she's pooping, and Jesse says that Tommy let him in. He asks how many people were at church the last service. She says 22, and he says he wants it full, then asks how to make that happen, and she says patience, hard work. He says, what about a raffle, and she says that Gary might donate a gift certificate, and he says maybe a flat screen TV. Emily says they can't afford it, and we get a lot more good scenes with Emily and Jesse. This is what I like, is that Tulip is there for Jesse's corrupted side, while Emily's there for what Jesse wants to be, and Emily says they can't afford it. Jesse says, don't worry about the money. Emily asks if he did something, and he asks what she means. She says she saw him breaking into Linus's place, and then his face was bandaged, and of course, Emily has no idea what's going on. She doesn't know about the powers and everything, and Emily says that she thought that things were on a nice track at church and worries about him. He says, don't worry about him anymore. Emily says, okay. He leans close, pulls a band-aid out of her hair. He says, we'll get Cassie back at the TV, says she'll do it, and Jesse says he's going to do something wonderful. The church will be full every Sunday. She asks what he'll do, and he doesn't answer, but he leaves. And we don't really know what he's going to do, but then we see another really nice flashback to young Jesse with Tulip, who's teaching him how to smoke, and we get the sense of how these two became friends. Definitely. His dad grabs him up, says he has to be an example for others. His dad spanks him with a belt while the others watch. He wants in pain, but doesn't cry, and I mean, yes, his dad was obviously very abusive, but it does seem like his dad was a good motivation as well. Like, his dad really made him think this is what you need to do, and it seemed like he did overall care about his son. He didn't want his son falling in the wrong crowd, and really, he just thought of it as, I think, tough love. I mean, there's a difference between tough love and abuse, but, if you get smacked, that's different. I think everyone gets smacked as a kid, but if you're getting hurt with a belt, I mean, that's straight-up abuse, definitely, and I think this episode definitely showed that really well, and that's something I really liked about this episode, is that while there was some great comedy, there was some really great serious moments for Jesse, and we're really starting to find out more about his past. I like the way they're doing that, and I like the way they're not telling us everything, but we are starting to find out more as the show goes on. I hope we continue to do that, and I hope those flashbacks are as good as this episode was. So now Jesse sits smoking outside the window. He then stubs at his cigarette. Fiora asks Cassidy why he didn't bring Jesse, and Cassidy says he's working on it. DeBlanc says bring the preacher and we'll take it out. Cassidy asks what it is and how they'll get it out, and Fiora says they'll cut him open, but DeBlanc says they can draw it out. Cassidy says that's better than cutting open, and DeBlanc says they get it back to its domicile, and Cassidy says the coffee can. Then he asks if they're angels, and Cassidy says that they can't be the ones in charge. DeBlanc says no. Cassidy takes notes. Cassidy asks how much payment they're offering. He says Jesse has a weakness for controlled substances. Rattles off a list of drugs, says it'll close the deal, and DeBlanc is stunned. Cassidy says money will do. The angel hands him a wallet. Cassidy takes it all. He tells him he'll be back soon. They ask for a specific time. He says very soon, and then he leaves. So Fiora says he definitely doesn't trust the guy. There's something about him he doesn't trust, and I think they know very well that, Cassidy is not going to give in to their demands. I think we know that he is on Jesse's side, or he's playing by his own rules. I really think Cassidy's just a play by his own rules kind of guy. He's not really on anyone's side. He does things the way he wants to. He pulls a device, lays it on the table. He says time to let them know what's going on, but DeBlanc says they'll be in trouble for being down there without permission, says they're on their own. Cassidy smokes, does drugs while a woman services him, and he's got booze, pill, and a whore and is pleased, and that's just enough for Cassidy. If he has alcohol, if he has some pills, and then he has a girl pleasuring him, I mean, that's really enough for him. And Odin then sits up playing Cubert at his desk at an old school computer. The mayor shows up. Miles says that Lacey's death is a bigger deal and asks what's causing the sinkholes, because clearly there's a lot of people getting murdered. He doesn't know what it's about. Miles says he has to ask these questions. Odin asks him about Austin and mentions the Green Acres group. Miles hands him some paperwork, and Odin talks about how his grandfather took care of some people that betrayed him and took care of what needed to be done. And we get the sense that his grandfather obviously is this kind of like man above the law. We don't really know who he is. Owen says his father was the same way. They take care of things. Miles says the tax revenues are down significantly and says the town has to grow or die. And Miles says he'd like to set up the meeting for him. Odin pees into his briefcase all over the brochures for Green Acres, and Fiora then watches the TV ad for a burger while DeBlanc stares at the coffee can. There's a ringing and both angels stare, and that's what we know what they are. We know they're angels. DeBlanc tells Fiora not to answer it. He does, but it's the phone, not the heaven calling device. He says that they're checking soon, and this is really cool. They have a heaven calling device. It's a phone that literally calls from heaven. I mean, how awesome is that? I've never seen something like that before, and I think that's really cool the way this is done. I mean, that's as awesome as the Flash's metahuman trackers. I mean, it's really cool. They literally have a heaven calling device, and he's checking out soon. Fiora pulls out his jacket, puts on his jacket, says he's hungry, puts on his cowboy hat, and leaves. DeBlanc stares at the angel phone. Fiora then goes to the hotel office, asks for a burger. He says there's just a vending machine. Fiora goes to stare at that, and I thought that was just really weird, the way he's just staring at things. Definitely very interesting stuff, the way that was done. definitely I thought that was really weird, but I definitely like the way I definitely like these two bonding. I like that we're getting more as the episode goes on, and these two, they are funny and they are really weird, but they're also kind of menacing as well. Just the way they act, the way they are in the show, I think is really well done. I think they're both doing a really great job. So Miles drinks a glass of wine as Emily comes in dragging the TV. He's in her kitchen. She's annoyed that he cleaned while she was babysitting the kids. He says the kids did their homework and it's all good. He offers to pour her a glass of wine. She tries to pay him, but he openly refuses. And she thanks him. He says she does so much for everyone else. Miles says she deserves a break, pulls out a chair for her to sit. They drink wine and chat. Miles tells her a story about a constituent who pooped on his driveway, and he says Doug felt bad about it and cleaned up after. Then he says that Odin has slipped his biscuit, and Emily tells Miles that she will never be with him. He says she's told him that before a lot of times. She takes off her pants, says he has to be out by morning. He follows her into the bedroom after rinsing the wine glass out. He strains up the table, then goes after her, and they clearly have sex. Then at the horror house, the customers and other girls hold a memorial. Tulip snaps and says Lacey was run down by cavemen and fell into a shit pit, and, obviously, again, she feels really bad about Lacey's death, and Tulip calls the men deviants and asks the woman why they want to run around being chased in their underwear, because, obviously, it's not the best thing to do, just being chased around like that. And Clive and Tulip then bicker. He says, too bad since Lacey was a great piece of ass, and he doesn't seem to care that Lacey was murdered. He just seems to care that she was a hot woman, and the man calls him down, says next hour's on the house, and I do like the way this was done. I think it was a good message overall of what Tulip's saying, that, beauty, I think the real message is, beauty's only skin deep. You need to treat a woman like royalty. You need to, and really, that's not really around a lot, in this town, clearly. It's not, niceness and kindness is not really something that's around a lot, and that's something I think that Tulip, as, savage as she is, she does have kindness in her, she does have compassion, and that's something that the town is losing, and I think that's one of the reasons why the church isn't as beloved as it once was, because there aren't many people with compassion in the town, and I think that definitely we do see that here. So, the men are happy, head off with a woman, and one of the girls drags Clive away with her. Mose mentions her mom. Tulip says the woman was too busy handling boners to deal with her. Mose says she'll make them some tea as the sex starts upstairs. Tulip goes upstairs, starts beating on Clive, then he falls out the window, except it wasn't Clive, it was actually Cassidy. And yes, finally, these two actually get a scene together. I loved seeing Tulip and Cassidy finally get that scene here. Clive comes to the door, stares, and Tulip begs Cassidy not to die, holds him on her lap while he bleeds. Karen then drives him to the hospital, and he's actually in a lot of pain. It's actually pretty funny the way she actually hears Cassidy. Cassidy grins. Tulip begs God not to let him die. She swears she'll be so good that God won't know it's her. Cassidy tells her to kiss him, and she does. He groans. She says he'll make it. Blood gushes at his neck where a shard of glass is stuck, and you really get the sense he's just going to tell her to do whatever, so she'll do it anyway because she feels bad. And the woman at the ER wants to hand her a stack of papers. Tulip pitches a fit, then looks back and says he's gone, but there's a trail of blood. Tulip falls into a room and finds him draining blood out of the cooler of plasma bags. He says she was right, he's gonna make it, and it seems he's gonna be okay. So I loved seeing these two finally have those scenes together. That's one of the things I've been most looking forward to seeing on the show. Finally, they got those scenes together that I've been wanting to have, and really was as deserving as I could imagine. I think it worked really well, and I'm glad that they finally did get some scenes together. So flashback to young Jesse and his dad. His dad wakes him up. They drive late at night to a place. His dad leaves him sitting in a chair while he goes into an office. Jesse picks up an ink pen off the table and reads an inscription. He steals an ashtray. It's the one he still has. His father argues with someone in Odin's office, and you can tell that definitely they know Odin. They know Odin very well. His dad walks out irritated after a hot discussion. Jesse appears in the office, and as they pass, he looks very disturbed. His dad tells Jesse that some people just can't be saved, and it's interesting because clearly there's something going on with Odin. We don't really know what it is, but Odin is then painting a tiny figurine in the present, and Jesse is women. They're working on a tiny replica of the Alamo, and Jesse wants to put Jim Bowie in the barracks, and then tells Odin he has a way to teach a lesson to the church, but needs some people to look up to. And he asks Odin to come to church tomorrow, then asks how long since he's been. Jesse says that Odin used to be a regular, says as his age, he has to be thinking what's next. Odin says the deal is don't talk about God, and he won't talk about how mad he gets, and, how meat gets made. And Jesse asks what if he's wrong, and there's judgment, and they're held to account for their actions. He asks what if there's punishment and fire, and I like the way he's saying this, him not believing in God and him not going to church. What if there's actually punishment for that? What if it's a problem? And Odin says, what if there's ice and screams that curl your blood? He says, what if eternity is spent living your worst memory? Odin says, what if, and this scene was so well done. Dominic Cooper and Jackie Earle Haley both just killed it in this scene. I love this scene overall. Odin says, what if you feel the pain you cause everyone else? Jesse asks, isn't he afraid? Odin says he's not. Jesse seems to be. Jesse says he can make him come to church. Odin says that wouldn't be very Christian, but of course we know how Jesse can do that. If he says come to church, he has to come to church, and Jesse says he knows he wants his father's land. That's the biggest plot Odin doesn't own, and he tells Odin to come to church and listen to his sermon. He says if he's not a Christian after that, the land is his, and I think it's a pretty reasonable deal, just to come and see if he actually believes in the ways of the Lord, and if he doesn't, then he can leave. I think that's honestly pretty, that's pretty reasonable. I like that Jesse wasn't, a hard-ass about it. He just said, look, I want you to come. They go back to the model, and I think Jesse really does want to save Owen. I think he can see that he's really hurting. He wants to help him, and the church is actually pretty busy. Jesse thanks them all for coming, and I love the way this scene was done. Dominic Cooper just killed it in this monologue. He says the real reason it's not easy coming here is because you think it wouldn't do any good, and Jesse says the world's crazy between war, bombs, coffee shops, and schools. I mean, just all this corrupt shit going on, and he says people are scared to hug each other because of disease. He says the world is turning to shit, and then Jesse says it's all their fault for turning their back on the Lord. He says they embrace false idols, and those things won't save them. Whiskey, money, sex, love, romance, none of that stuff is going to save them, and he says their parents and children won't save them. He says a 55-inch flat-screen TV out there won't save them either. He says they are sinners who forgot the power of the Lord. He says he's there to remind them that starting now, he's going to bring them back to God, and you can really see how he's trying to be a good preacher and why he wants to be a good preacher. He generally wants people to, believe in God again, because a lot of people seem like they don't seem to believe in God, and he's one of the only people, and he is God, as we know, so, he kind of has God's power. Well, he's not necessarily God, but he's like a God, and he says, one by one, he says, one man amongst them who has strayed furthest, and they all stand and look as he stops at Odin's pew. Jesse says God wants Odin back. He touches him, says, serve him, you will go out with joy and peace. Odin nods, but he's not pleased, and Jesse asks him if he will serve God. Odin says no. Jesse then asks again. Odin says no again. He goes to walk out. Jesse touches him, gets the look. He says, serve God. Odin stares stunned. He then asks again, will you serve God? And again, basically forces him to say he will, and the crowd gasps and starts buzzing. Realizing what Jesse is doing, Odin says yeah. Jesse nods and backs away. Such a well-done scene. I love the way that was done, and it really shows how Jesse can use powers for good and for evil. He can use them for good in the sense he can save people, but he can use him for evil in the sense of what he did to Donnie. And, he can really just use him in either way, and later, Fior sits eating chops and staring at the Cheetos fuzz in his hands. There's a ringing. Fior answers, but this time it's not the hotel phone. It is the heaven phone, and Fior backs away from it, and DeBlanc looks horrified. We don't know what it's about. We don't know why this is ringing. We don't know what the heaven phone's all about, but that is the way the episode ends. Overall, guys, really good stuff. Let's just get into this episode overall. So overall, guys, really great episode. Like I said, this was much better than last week. Not that last week was bad. Last week just felt very choppy, and this week felt a lot more cohesive. This was a story about Jesse trying to save this man, Odin. He clearly forced himself to save him, but I think Jesse's really starting to understand his powers. He's becoming more powerful because he's understanding the full extent of them, and he's realizing how he can utilize them in good and bad situations. And in this case, this was something he wanted to do. He wanted to see if he really could force someone to believe in God. And if he is really going to do that, I mean, that's going to be really interesting to see if he does that. And if that's his only way to get people back into the church, that's something I'm really looking forward to, the way that Jesse's going to become maybe a corrupt preacher, because he really does care about what he's doing. It's just the way he's doing it. Obviously, it seems like he's going to force people. Let's see how that's going to go. That's going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing more about this character of Odin, though. Why did Odin lose his faith? Why did Odin stop going to church? What's going on is something I'm definitely looking forward to, seeing how that's all going to go down. I loved, actually, the flashbacks we got in this episode. That really added to this episode overall. I think, really, it's more interesting to see, as the episodes go on, it's more and more interesting to get more into Jesse's past, see what he's going through. Because, really, I mean, as we saw, he's going through a lot. He really is. His dad clearly abused him, but he also seemed like he really motivated him, really showed him why going to church was important. This is something that clearly does matter to Jesse, and it doesn't just matter to him just because his dad told him to. I think it really does. In his heart, I think it's something he really does care about. I think we really do get that sense in this episode. But I'm also looking forward to seeing what really turned Jesse away. I mean, we did see that scene with Tulip and him smoking, but what really turned him away? What was going on with his dad and Odin? Clearly, they had some beef against each other. That's something I'm not really sure what's going on there, but that I'm really looking forward to. What is the heaven phone, really? Why is the heaven phone ringing? What's going to happen with that? That's something I'm really looking forward to. Again, it's a very weird concept, but it's really cool as well that they have a heaven phone. Is there a hell phone as well? I'm wondering if what's gonna happen with that. Fior and DeBlanc, I'm pretty sure we can tell that Cassidy is not going to turn against Jesse just the way that's going. He's not going to give them information. He's not really working for them. He's really working on his own terms, and I like that. I like seeing Cassidy be his own guy. He's not going to, let people tell him what to do, because that's not who Cassidy is. Cassidy does what he feels is best, and that's how he works. Cassidy does what Cassidy does best, what Cassidy thinks is best, and I love that we finally got a scene between Cassidy and Tulip. I thought that was awesome, and the way that Tulip really is trying to help these women is kind of similar to what just happened in Penny Dreadful with Lily, and the way that she's trying to help all prostitutes. The difference is that Tulip is being a lot more vocal and not so savage about it in the way that Lily was. Definitely, this is not her mission, but it is something that she has a problem with. I think really it's all about kindness, how there seems to be any kindness in this world whatsoever, which is surprising because it's the South, and usually, Southern people are like the nicest people ever. You'll see they're snobby, but they're usually like really overly nice, and in this town it doesn't seem that way. It seems like a lot of people are very cruel. Why are these murders going on, basically? Why was this girl murdered? That's something I'm really looking forward to, seeing what's going on with that, how that's all going to go down. I think that's overall going to be very interesting. No Eugene in this episode, surprising. I was surprised we didn't get any Eugene here. The first episode without Eugene, I thought was a bit surprising, and not a lot with Sheriff Root either, except for him investigating, this murder of Lacey and everything. I feel like there's definitely more going on there than we think, just the way it's going. I think there's a lot more going on. Who are these guys? Why were they wearing lampshades? I mean, it's really weird overall as to what's going on. That's something I'm definitely looking forward to. I like the scenes between Jesse and Emily because that is clearly someone that he wants to help, and he does really want things to go in the best way possible. He wants things to work well for the church, and you can tell that she does too, but she doesn't have the hope that he really has. And again, that's something that I think Jesse really does hold. He holds all of this power and all this hope, and that's something that Emily just can't really relate to. I thought it was a very nice scene. I really like the way that was done overall. Definitely one of my favorite parts of this episode was the scenes between Jesse and Emily, because it really is showing, how we compare Jesse from the flashbacks to Jesse now, and I think that's going to be something I hope we get more of. I hope we get more flashbacks. I think that's something that they're doing really well, and I'm really enjoying that, and definitely I'm looking forward to seeing how that's all going to go down, what's going to happen with that. That's something I'm definitely looking forward to. Odin, his father, there's clearly something going on with his father. We get the sense that something's going on there. We don't know exactly what it is, but there's something going on. He told that story about his father, what's going on there. His father was clearly corrupt. We're not really sure. We still have yet to be introduced to Graham McTavish's character, which I don't know if you guys know, but he is the main villain of this show, and we're still introduced to him, so I don't know if we're going to introduce him in the next episode. Maybe we will. I don't really know. We're almost halfway through the season, guys, though I can't really believe it, but we're almost halfway through the season, and I think as the show goes on, it just starts to get more and more interesting. I'm really loving the way the show is going. I think they're doing a good job with not doing too much too soon, definitely, because it's only episode 4. I think a lot of people are kind of like, oh, they're not doing enough, but not every episode is going to be like the premiere. The premiere is to introduce us to everyone, show us what they could be like, and I think this episode was more of showing us what the show is really going to be like. The moment you guys saw this episode, love to hear your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next show, which will be for tonight's episode of Guilt, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.